What's up, everybody? I'm James Duggan, here with John Ryan. How you doing?
Hi there. I'm good, James. How are you doing?
Well, I'm about to be in a great mood because you went to check out Tom Clancy's The Division.
Tom Clancy's The Division. Yeah, I did. It was super cool.
I have a ton of questions about that game, not the least of which being, is it an MMO?
Sort of, yeah. It is massive, it is multiplayer, and it is online.
Okay.
So, yes, I would say by definition it is an MMO. It's not necessarily an MMO in the
conventional sense of like...
Yeah, where there's a gargantuan, multi-zoned world.
So how does the zoning work? Do you think it's instanced or... first of all, is it seamless? Can you run across the map without running into a loading screen?
We played for 2 hours straight and, ran all over Midtown Manhattan. And it's a surprisingly sizable chunk of New York that they give you to run around. I mean, it's almost a one-to-one recreation of Midtown.
That's impressive.
I never saw one loading screen.
Oh, wow. And so you were explaining to me a little bit earlier that there was a PvE zone, but then there's also kind of an open world,
and
anybody kill anybody.
Right. And so that's where the sort of PvE versus PvP stuff comes in. And when I first saw it, it was at E3 either last year or the year before. I think it was last year. I got a little bit worried because I'd been looking forward to Division since they announced it in 2013.
Sure.
And when I saw it last year, I was like, oh, okay, so this is just a standard PvP, team deathmatch or capture the flag or whatever. But when I finally saw how it tied into the rest of the world, it's this thing called the Dark Zone. And it's basically, if you're looking at the map, it's the center of Midtown. So it's like Times Square and like a bunch of stuff right south of Central
It's where Mufasa
Park.
told Simba not to go.
Yeah, it's the elephant graveyard.
Yeah. The light did not touch there.
Exactly. It's where the virus, because the whole thing is, it's a post-epidemic New York. There's this horrible virus that got unleashed, and it's where like the virus struck hardest. So it was the first place to kind of go dark, and it's called the Dark Zone. And then but that's also where you're going to find like the best kind of loot and the best armor and the weapons that it's stuff that they I asked them about it, and they said that you can find it out in the PvE-centric world, like in the rest of the map. But it's going to be a lot more, not necessarily plentiful, but you'll have better chances of finding better gear if you bother to gear up and go into the Dark Zone. Because when you go in, there'll still be enemy patrols and, bad guys lurking around.
Sure.
And, emergent, like, totally optional little quests and encounters and stuff that you can run into.
Sure.
But also, once you get inside, then you are obligated to, but you are totally free to attack any other operative that you can see at will. Like maybe you see a dude pick up like a really sweet grenade launcher or a machine gun that you want, and because
like weird, you just picked up my grenade launcher.
Exactly, and because out in the regular part of the city.
So are you dropping your inventory when you die?
You're dropping anything you've picked up.
Oh, in the Dark Zone.
Yeah. So the way that it works is that loot and gear in the rest of the city is instanced. So, like, if you shoot a bad guy, he might drop something completely different for you than he drops for me. Or he might drop anything for you at all and just drop something for me. In the Dark Zone, everybody can see all the loot that's on the ground that is, like, specialty loot, let's say. And there's only one of it. So if you can get it, and you can get it to an extraction point and, wait for your evacuation truck or helicopter, but yeah, so if you can get that out, then you've got that really good piece of gear. But the other thing, too, is that if you make the choice to attack another player, then everybody back at HQ is like, hey, this guy's gone rogue. He's not good for anybody anymore. Everybody get him. If you go far enough with that, if you just like walk down the street like, ah, ha, 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 bam, 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 and just start wasting everybody that you see, eventually the guys back at Central Command are going to be like, all right, this guy's like a legitimate problem.
Yeah, you be a pirate.
Exactly. And then every player who's in the Dark Zone will get like a little mission notification, and they'll be like, this guy needs to be stopped, take him down.
That's kind of similar to a Dark Souls-y scenario.
Yeah, it's cool. One of those scenarios where it's just like, it could be, you have a little bit of bad luck and maybe get blasted by somebody, or literally everybody is out to get you and it's no one's fault but your own.
There's actually a game that came out on Steam. It was another open-world survival PvP game, which had a similar, and I'm sure it's not the first time it's been implemented across all of the open-world RPGs in all time, but basically, if you killed a player, you got flagged for a certain amount of time where you would drop your inventory. So that's very interesting to see that translate over, because when I first saw the game, I thought, I was like, wow, this looks like kind of a AAA DayZ, but it sounds like there's a lot more going on, and one of the things that is going on that ties it in a conventional sense to MMOs is it is an RPG. You do pick from a skill tree that basically establishes you to a medic, a techie, or a like tank security dude archetype.
Yeah, but you're not locked into that archetype, which is really handy. So basically, the way that it works is like as you progress through the game, you unlock story missions, you level up, you gain access to not just better gear, but better abilities. So, like, you start out, you can have, like, 1 or 2 special powers. And, like, one of them is to, like, send out a homing pulse that, like, pings everybody on your radar who's a bad guy. And maybe it gives you, like, a damage buff. Or you can have, like, a riot shield that'll, like, deflect some bullets. Or you can have, like, a special kind of grenade or something. But as you progress forward through the story, you can, you don't have to necessarily stick to one tree. Like, one unlock does not necessarily unlock the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So once you build or find the appropriate unlockable, whatever it is that unlocks that specific skill, you can just swap to that skill whenever you like. And, again, I'm prefacing this by I haven't played the rest of the game. I played for 2 hours, 2.5 hours of the demo event. So, like, it doesn't necessarily feel like a full-blown RPG where it's like there's 6 different factions and you've got 12 options to do stuff with each of them, and like if this guy gets really mad at you, you're totally screwed over there. I don't know how deep that kind of a system's going to go, but it takes and borrows from the RPG stuff where it's like you definitely can build your team. You can either play totally alone, or you can play up to 4 friends at a time in any given.
So a total of 5.
4.
4. Okay, total 4. So with 3 friends in a fire team. Now, with that fire team, you mentioned a World of Warcraft dungeon, which got me extremely excited because that's some of my favorite content in World of Warcraft. And same thing with Destiny, any kind of group content, raids, stuff like that. And the question always becomes with an MMO now that at the end game, there's expected to be end game content, and a lot of that with the conventional mindset comes down to group PvE, like dungeons or raids or some kind of mechanical heavy encounter, or group PvP, which sounds like is more than covered with the Dark Zone. So, have they said anything, or did you get any kind of sense that there would be some kind of like structure for that?
We didn't really talk about like post-launch stuff, let's say, and like what's really way far down the line. We did play I don't think it was like end game mission, but I think it was it was a much higher difficulty level and a much higher level cap or much higher level ranking for the players who were for the characters we were playing as. Than it was when we started off. So it seems to me that the majority of it, to speculate, I would say it's probably going to focus a lot on PvP, getting into the Dark Zone and really, kind of making your own dungeons almost. Like saying, I want to go to this part of the Dark Zone, I want to find these 2 pieces of gear, and let's try and figure out what kind of obstacles, what kind of enemies, what kind of other players are probably going to be in our way when we do that.
Well, it's really smart to use players as a tool to create your own emergent encounters because, spoilers, even the best and the longest running MMOs, World of Warcraft, run out of content because you create this linear progression for people. They beat it. They even beat it 30 times, and at that point, the content is used up. So it's way easier to create, I think, tools to give players to create their own experiences as opposed to being like, here's this raid, here are all the encounters. But group PvE is fun at the same time. So it sounds like the question is still a little, or the answer to that question is a little bit ambiguous, but honestly, I think that's a good thing because I think breaking down the convention of an MMO needs to have quests, it needs to have zones, it needs to have flight paths, it needs to have, raids and all these other things and respecking, and it's like, it just needs to have a lot of players. You need to feel like a community, and it sounds like that's what we're getting a sense of.
Yeah.
There is loot. There is a paper doll. You can
you can pick up specific items that are designed solely for aesthetic purposes. Like I found a really fly white jacket. It was really
nice.
Cool. My guy kind of made my guy look like Lenny Kravitz. I was totally okay with it.
Nice. Smooth.
But yeah, it's one of those things where like you'll see the. It's not so much like a raid in the sense of like if people think of like a Destiny raid where there are a lot of like really complex mechanics and puzzles that you have to solve. Maybe there will be. I don't know. But it seems like right now it was much more in the vein of like a strike or like a dungeon raid where it's like you're going to run into a ton of dudes and the difficulty will ramp up according to how well you're playing, but also how many people you're playing with and what kind of skills you have equipped.
That's real cool.
Totally. And it was cool too to see like because there have been so many sort of not different iterations of it. I'm sure that the development team have had a very clear vision of what they've been doing for the last 3 years at this point, at least, probably more since they announced. But to the few demos that I have seen, like one time it showed off, it was like, this is like a super explory open world game. And then it was like, this is really PvP heavy. And they were like, oh, it's an RPG too. So I was like, I don't really know what
are you doing?
This is. But the cool thing is, like after having sat down and played it for an hour, I get it now.
Right.
And it's a really great combination of all of those genres.
That's cool. All right, well, we're looking forward to seeing more on this game. And for all of your preview content, and of course the review when it comes out, you can keep it right here on IGN.